Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday. I am so glad that you are all here with me. I hope everybody had a happy Memorial Day weekend and a nice and smooth short work week this week. Although I don't know about you, but sometimes it feels like the short weeks, the 4-day work weeks, can be the longest weeks ever. Am I right? So if you're here, I appreciate you. I want to see you. So leave me a comment and let me know. Ooh, sorry. Um, Let me know if you're here live or if you watch on the replay. Let me know that too. I always like to acknowledge and appreciate folks that tune in to these lessons. So last week, by way of recap, we talked about um, why this, sorry, my nose is itching, why this concept of calories in, calories out, or eat less, move more, about why that is a fundamentally flawed concept, which is, of course, the traditional approach to dieting and exercise that most, if not all of us, have grown up hearing and tried many times without lasting success. So I know today we're going to be talking about why do we have all this excess weight, belly, butt, hips, thighs, that whole general midsection region. Why is the weight there in the first place? Why does it go there? And why does it get stuck there and seemingly not go away despite our best efforts? Before we dig into that subject, I do just want to review last week because the two concepts are related. So, the reason why calories in, calories out, eat less, move more, that whole traditional dieting and exercise concept doesn't work. First of all, ladies, it has nothing to do with how hard you tried, right? It's essentially not your fault. That entire concept that in order to lose weight, calories in must be less than calories out is based on some fundamentally flawed physiological assumptions. The reason why it doesn't work is based in science and physiology. It has nothing to do with your willpower, your determination, your grit, your effort. Nothing. It really doesn't. So the fundamentally flawed assumptions are chiefly the following two things. First of all, that concept, calories in, less than calories out equals weight loss, assumes that calories in is an independent variable from calories out. That if you reduce calories in, it doesn't have any effect on calories out, right? And that is not true. Calories in and calories out are fundamentally connected. They are dependent variables. So what that means is if you reduce calories in, it is going to have an effect on your body's ability to produce calories out. I'll explain that in a minute. Actually, I'll explain it right now. Let's go back to the analogy we talked about last week about the coal burning furnace, right? So if you work in a coal factory and you are used to, whoa, something weird just happened. Hold on. I shrunk myself down. Didn't mean to. Okay, there we go. If you have a coal factory, right, and your factory is used to burning 2,000 calories a day, and every day you get an influx of 2,000 calories worth of coal to burn in your furnace and produce 2,000 calories of energy. That's great. Occasionally, maybe you receive a little bit more than 2,000 calories, and so you kind of keep that reserves in your storage closet, right? You keep that energy reserves just in case one day you don't get 2,000 calories. So let's say that starts happening, right? Your furnace is used to burning 2,000 calories of energy and producing that much output because it gets that much input. And then one day, all of a sudden, you only get 1,500 units of energy. What's going to happen to your furnace? Are you going to keep burning 2,000 calories of energy output? Is that what your furnace is going to keep producing, 2,000 units of energy output? You can try for a little while, but eventually your furnace is not going to have enough fuel. Even if it burns what's in storage, it's still not going to have enough fuel to continue to produce 2,000 units of energy output. So ultimately, you will have no choice but to reduce the overall energy output of your furnace if you continue to receive lower and lower amounts of fuel energy input. Does this make sense to everybody? That is how your metabolism functions. Calories in directly affects your body's ability to produce energy out. Let me know in the comments if this makes sense to you. These are dependent variables. Changing one directly impacts the other. And by the way, it goes the other way as well. If you increase your calories out, your energy out, let's say you add 500 calories a day worth of energy out, that action will have the effect on how much your body demands from the energy in. And that produces increased hunger and a really challenging situation for you to avoid eating. So, more on that in just a second. I want to touch on the calories out part for a second, the energy out, let's say. So, the issue with energy out is that the second flawed assumption of the calories in, calories out concept is that it assumes that this calories in and calories out is an isolated system, that nothing else affects calories out but calories in. Nothing else affects energy out but how much energy we take in. And that is simply not true. Yes, there is only one input to how much energy and fuel our bodies receive, and that is our food, because fundamentally food is fuel. That's it. Food is fuel and nutrients for your body to survive. There are many things that affect your overall energy output. Food, fuel is one of them for sure. There's also something called the thermogenic effect of food. It is how much energy on the inside does it take your body to actually process and utilize the fuel it's just received. Your body reacts to different kinds of fuel in different ways, which we'll get to in a second. Secondly, we've all generally heard of this. Every human being has something called a base metabolic rate. It's essentially how much energy your body produces just by surviving each day. Breathing, muscular function, bone and tissue and cellular repair, building protein, thinking, heart beating, walking around, all of those, sleeping even. All of those activities require energy production by your body. And the thing about base metabolic rate is it's not stable. It changes. It can fluctuate from one day to the next based on what are you consuming as fuel and what are the tasks that your body must perform. So many things can raise and lower base metabolic rate. That is a discussion for another time, but just know that that is not a constant variable. It does kind of go up and down based on circumstances. The other thing that contributes to energy out is, of course, physical movement, exercise, for sure. But think about that for a minute. The average person, whatever the exercise is that they're doing, unless you're like training for a marathon or something, or an Ironman, most movement or exercise sessions, you're probably burning between 150 to 300, maybe 500 calories at the most in an exercise session. So at the most, if you consume 2,000 calories, just to use that number, that's a quarter of your fuel in, right? Really, the number statistically is much lower as far as how much does physical movement account for your total energy out production. There's a bunch of studies. I can send them to you in the show notes if you would like to read them, that basically demonstrate that physical exertion, exercise, movement, really only makes up about 5% of our energy out. Everything else comes from the two things I just mentioned, and also something called post-exercise thermogenic effect. It's the afterburn of a workout or any kind of movement. It's how much energy does your body then have to produce to restore glycogen to your muscles, to repair muscle tissue, to restore your heart rate and breathing to, normal resting levels, and so on, things like that. So all four of those factors contribute to your energy out. And back to what I was just saying, if physical exercise only accounts for about 5 to, at the absolute most, 25% of our energy out expenditure, why do we spend like 80 to 90% of our time and effort focusing on that one variable? It's kind of like if you had a test that was 90% math and 10% reading, and you spent 90% of your time trying to get better at reading. How would that test result go? Just think about that for a second. I am absolutely not saying that movement and exercise is not important. It absolutely is important for overall physical health, cardiovascular health, muscular strength and endurance, stress relieving activities. 100% you should move your body as an exercise for those reasons. What I am saying, however, is that physical movement and exercise is not the number one end all be all, or it's really even just a minor factor when it comes to weight loss efforts. That's what I'm saying. So why is that, Rebecca? What is going on? Why are we storing fat? And what is the most effective way to control our body's fat stores and ultimately release some of the fat stores that we have? So we've talked a little bit in previous lessons about homeostasis. That word means balance. It is the number one most important thing to your body. Everything your body does is designed to maintain a system of balance. Your body does not like change in any form or fashion. And the more you try to force it to change its weight and its fat stores by restricting the calories and exercising till you puke, the more your body is going to respond by lowering your thermostat, lowering your metabolism, lowering the energy out so that it doesn't die. This is your body's way of ensuring survival. And it's this kind of calorie restriction, just to restrict calories to try to lose weight, that is the exact thing that puts you in the infamous and always feared starvation mode. Think back to the coal furnace. Your body wants to output 2,000 calories of energy. If you only give it, 1,500 or less, it has no choice but to slow down all of its systems because it's not getting the fuel that it needs to perform the functions that it needs to perform. That's why your body temperature will reduce. Your hair and nails will become brittle and fall out. You'll lose muscle weight because those functions of your body, right? It takes energy to make healthy hair and nails. It takes energy to repair and maintain muscle. It takes energy to maintain appropriate body temperatures. So if you are depriving your body of the energy that it needs to perform its basic functions, it is going to downregulate whatever functions that it can so it doesn't die. That's what starvation mode really is about. So, okay, we've established, I think now, that reducing calories is not the answer, and in many ways it can be the problem. So if how much we eat is not the problem, then what is? The answer, in short, is what we eat and when we eat it. Those two factors are much more significant to our overall health and fat reduction goals than how much we eat. Because if we are fueling ourselves appropriately, it is very, very difficult to overeat. Think about babies. Those of you that are mothers or aunts or sisters, Have you ever tried to feed a baby that is full and satisfied? That baby is going to do everything it can to refuse to continue to eat. It will scream its head off if you continue to try to feed it when it's already had enough of the appropriate fuel that the baby needs to survive and thrive. Like, you cannot force feed or overfeed an infant, because as human beings, we are born with that natural regulation to know when our bodies have actually had enough fuel. We seriously lose touch with that sense as we age and as we diet and as, other life events happen. But at root level, that's what's happening there. So what that means is your body does not understand what a calorie is, right? So how much doesn't really matter from the caloric perspective, right? When you eat and what you eat impact us far more, because a calorie is just a unit of heat energy. That's just how your body recognizes. All your body recognizes is that energy is coming in. It's kind of like the fuel for our car, right? The car knows that it's getting fuel. Let's go with the car analogy for a little bit. Your bodies are created like high functioning sports cars. That's how we're designed to function. The sports car requires fuel. Your body sports car requires fuel. Yeah, it can run on basic unleaded fuel, but it functions much better on the high octane stuff. And similar, and again, with the car, most of us only fill up our cars with fuel when we're getting close to empty, right? It does, unless you have some kind of like legitimate concern of a fuel shortage, you're probably not going to top off your car every quarter of a tank when it gets every little bit, continuously top off your car. And certainly, just like a car, if the fuel tank is full, you cannot physically put more fuel in the car. The only way that you can create fuel reserves in that scenario when your fuel tank is full is to store them. You get little containers and you put the extra fuel in there and you store it in a place that's readily accessible to use in the event that the main fuel tank is depleted. It is the exact same for our body's fat storage facilities. If our fuel tank is full and we keep putting fuel in our body, the body has no choice but to create containers for extra energy reserve storage. That is what your body fat is. And I think that we would all agree that our bodies react differently based on what kind of fuel we give it, right? If you consume, a half dozen Twinkies versus a big plate of broccoli versus a ribeye steak, your body is going to react differently to those different kinds of fuel. You might not know exactly what's going on the inside, but I hope we can all agree that yes, our bodies will react differently to those 3 different meals. If you agree, type yes, I agree in the comments. Let me know that I'm on the right track here and it is making sense. So, oops, I keep hitting this button that makes the screen disappear. All right, so now we know that what we eat matters. So, and we know how generally we produce excess fuel storage. So what's really going on? You may wonder. What is the thing that makes the difference between how our body reacts to food and whether or not we store it as fat? The answer is hormones. If we want to understand why we have excess body fat and how to release that body fat, we first have to understand the role that hormones play in our body. And ladies, we have a particularly challenging situation in this context, more so than men, because men have, like 10 or 15 hormones. I just made that number up, but for example. And women, we have like 856 that range all about at different levels all the time. So yes, This is also the chief reason why, men can stop drinking soda and lose 15 pounds overnight. And a woman will stop drinking soda, for example, and maybe if she's lucky, she'll lose a pound over the course of like 3 weeks. It's not because of the fuel, it's because of the hormones. Hormones are essentially your body's internal regulation systems, kind of like a traffic light. So there are numerous hormones at work inside your body every second of the day, all around the clock, 24/7. They regulate your body temperature, they control your digestion, they manage your blood sugar, they ensure proper liver function, mental function, energy levels, and so on and so on. All day long, for every system of your body, it is your hormones that tell your body, speed up, slow down, no, stop. Oh, wait, turn left for storage, turn right for removal, and so on and so on. When it comes to fat storage, there is no more important hormone than insulin. Throughout the medical and scientific community, insulin is commonly referred to as the fat storage hormone. That is its main job, if you think about insulin like a nutrient sensor, when you start to eat, every time you start to eat, insulin is going to rev its engines to go out in your body and see what kind of fuel is coming in and what do I need to do with it, right? So insulin senses that food is coming in and it actually prepares to store that energy for use by the body, either for short-term use, stored in your muscle tissue, skeletal tissue, and sometimes around your organs for immediate use in your coal burning factory. And if it senses that there is an abundance of fuel coming in of one form or the other, the fuel tank is full, those short-term storage supplies are full, but fuel is still coming in, well then it's insulin's job to take that fuel that you've just consumed and put it in the storage tank. So every time you eat, that is what insulin does, right? Okay, so what does all this mean? Let me give one more point. For whatever reason, physiologically, when insulin goes looking for a place to store the extra energy, in your car, the easiest place to store your fuel reserves is in the trunk, right? Same is true for the human body. The easiest place to store the extra energy reserves is in the trunk, which is, by that I mean broadly your midsection, belly, butt, hips, thighs. That is true for both men and women. That's why men get the love handles when they have some excess energy storage going on. And sadly for us ladies, that just simply is the easiest place for insulin to direct fat storage. So what you should also now realize, I hope, is that if insulin is the nutrient sensor that generates and controls fat storage, it should be clear that if insulin is present in your body, running around determining what to do with your fuel, especially if it's on high alert because you have an abundance of fuel, let's say, you are not able to release any energy stores, aka fat, because the primary goal of insulin is to create energy storage. So insulin's very presence in your body blocks energy release. Which means the point of today, if you do not find a way to lower your insulin response, you will never be able to access your fat stores effectively over the long term. So, okay, let me know if that makes sense. Just say, yes, that makes sense. Insulin equals fat storage. Something like that in the comments. Let me know that I'm on track and this makes sense. If insulin is circulating in the body, fat burning is turned off because insulin's job is fat storage. So if we really want to effectively target our energy release, our fat storage release, we must find a way to control and limit, really, insulin's presence in the body. So I am sure you are now all wondering, well, okay, Rebecca, what are the things that raise insulin and what kind of things lower insulin? So here are the primary two things that raise insulin in the body. It may be clear that the first one is eating. Simply the act of eating produces an insulin response. Every food that you consume is composed of something called a macronutrient. I think we've all heard this term, right? There are 3 macronutrients, and all that word means, macronutrient, is what is the most prevalent form of energy in that food substance. And the 3 macronutrients are protein, fat, and carbohydrates. So, just like the example I gave you about Twinkies, broccoli, and a ribeye steak, those 3 foods have different macronutrient ratios, right? Twinkies, primarily macronutrient carbohydrates, or AKA sugar. Broccoli, sort of the same, primary macronutrient carbohydrates, although much more natural, AKA sugar. Ribeye steak, combination of macronutrients there. Protein, obviously, and also dietary fat. So when it comes to the type of fuel you consume, complex carbohydrates, Twinkies, are the number one driving force of high insulin levels, especially if they are simple carbohydrates. That is insulin's primary job there, and this is point number 2, so I'm going to just talk about the 2 points together now. The consumption of simple, refined, processed carbohydrates, aka sugar, is the chief cause of elevated blood sugar. Elevated blood sugar is the number 2 thing that raises insulin in the body. So eating in general, and particularly eating sugary, starchy, processed foods, like insulin is going to be on high alert because your body's preferred blood sugar is in a range of 80 to 100, right? We've talked about this in previous lessons. And specifically, your body wants your blood sugar to be at 89. So every time you eat, insulin will release and go searching about your body to find ways to bring your blood sugar back to 89. And if it can't, the first way it's going to try to do that is to pull the blood sugar out and put it in those short-term, very normal storage containers, right? Skeletal muscle, your liver, a little bit around your organs. That's the natural energy storage containers. If those are full, gas tank is full, then insulin is going to take that excess blood sugar and shove it into created long-term storage, which is your fat deposits in the belly, butt, hips, thighs region. That's how that happens. So let's look at the other macronutrient, plural, fat and protein. So protein can also stimulate an insulin response, not anywhere near as high as simple refined carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates, because they still convert to glucose, do also produce an insulin response. It's a little less than the onslaught of simple refined processed carbohydrates, but just understand that even natural sources of carbohydrates, potatoes, broccoli, leafy greens, beets, olive, root vegetables, they still produce an insulin response. They still elevate your blood sugar. Yes, they contain nutrients, and you have to determine for yourself how much they impact your blood sugar levels and your insulin response. Protein also can stimulate an insulin response. However, it's a bit more complicated, and I won't go into it right now. The cascade of hormones that is released when you consume protein, which has many other uses in the body. So protein, unlike carbohydrates and fat, protein is not an energy, it's not a fuel for energy. your body has to take the protein and break it down and turn it into a fuel that your body can use for energy. That is why protein has the highest thermogenic effect of food. Your body requires significantly more energy output to process protein and turn it into a fuel that you can use. So yes, protein will generate an insulin response, but it is largely mitigated by the other hormones that come into play and help protein do what it needs to do. Building block for your muscles and cells, breaks down into amino acids, also critical for many functions in your body. And unlike fat and carbohydrates, unlike fat and glucose, your body can't store extra protein. So whatever it can't use, it just flushes out, right? So now fat is the other macronutrient. Fat actually does not generate an insulin response in your body. It's the singular macronutrient that is pure energy that will not spike insulin's release in your body. It's also, if you've listened to other live lessons, it is also the singular macronutrient that is responsible for so many other wonderful functions in your body, and it is directly responsible for long-term energy production and metabolic function and cellular health and mental function. Go back to the live lessons and find the one on fat. I'll probably revisit that topic again in the coming weeks. So those are the primary two things that raise insulin in the body: the act of eating and high blood sugar levels. So if you are unfortunately one of those women who still subscribes to the I must eat 4 to 6 meals a day of largely carbohydrates, just understand that if you eat 4 to 6 times a day, you are never giving most of the systems in your body time to rest and digest, and you are producing the chronic presence of insulin within your body. And that in that circumstance, over time, it is going to be very, very challenging for you to target and release the fat reserves around your midsection that you so desperately are trying to target and release, regardless of how much you exercise, because of what we talked about earlier in this lesson. So I'm sure you now might be thinking, okay, well, how often should I eat, and what should I eat to help lower my blood sugar so that I can ultimately reduce my insulin levels and finally begin to release some of my energy stores? Well, I touched on that briefly just now, but largely, ladies, that is a subject for another live lesson. So in closing, if you would like any of the studies I referenced or in this video or others, just go ahead and send me your email to my inbox and I will put you on the list for the show notes. As always, if you have any friends or family members that could benefit from the content shared in our group, by all means, please invite them in. I would absolutely love to grow our community here as much as we possibly can, because I think it's just amazing to see all of us come together to learn and support each other as we learn how to break free of the yo-yo diet mindset and cycle and really make lasting changes for true and transformational health improvement. That's why we're all here, right? So on that note, I will talk to you all next time. Have a great weekend, ladies. Bye-bye.